Hey y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, Marine Corps veteran and host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. As always, the Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and our dedicated staff at the Texas Veterans Land Board. Today, the Next Gen Warrior Show is on the road at the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic in the Veteran Wellness Center at Endeavors. Today, we are joined by a special guest. John Allman is the president and CEO of Endeavors. John, great to have you on the program today.
Thanks, Dan. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So one thing that I am so proud about this show is to have veterans on like yourself who have taken their second careers and gone on to serve and lead in ways that give back to their community. And I'm so excited to highlight your story for you to be able to talk about the mission here at Endeavors. But before we do that, before we get into this incredible space that you all can see behind us here, tell us a little bit about your military service.
Oh, thank you. I grew up in a small town in Cabot, Arkansas. When I was growing up, I was only 8 miles from Little Rock Air Force Base, so every day when I went out, literally saw airplanes flying overhead and got the bug. Graduated from the University of Arkansas in 1987, attended pilot training. After pilot training, became a T-38 instructor pilot at Vance Air Force Base for 5 years. A lot of fun flying fast and small airplanes. But we also wanted to explore larger airplanes. So I went to C-5s at Dover, Delaware. And then from Dover, went to a headquarters staff job and then followed on with an assignment in Ramstein, Germany, flying DC-9s, Air Medevac. And then finished my career here at Randolph Air Force Base in 2008 and retired and then went on my way outside the military.
So I want to make sure that our audience knows at home, you are also a part of a really incredible mission that rescued critically wounded survivors from the terrorist attack on the USS Cole.
Yes.
I know we could probably talk about that mission, the lead up, the day, in the weeks afterwards, and the impact that that's had on your life. But tell us a little bit about that mission, who you served it with, and the impact that that's had on you.
That's a great question, Dan. You know, when you're flying Air Medevac, regardless if you're flying the fixed wing or the helicopter version of that, you never know when that next call is going to come. And when that call comes, you never know what that mission is going to be. And we knew a little bit about what that mission was going to be when the crews went into crew rest that evening before we were alerted to fly down to Djibouti and also down to Aden, Yemen to pick up these critically injured soldiers from the USS Cole attack. And it was an incredible time to be an American and be a pilot in the Air Force, to be able to fly down there and pick these folks up, many of them were critically wounded, burned from head to toe. When I saw those folks that were part of that mission, you know, you wonder how many of them would survive. Yeah. And they all did. Every single one of them survived from that mission. So we transported them back to Ramstein, Landstuhl Regional Medical Center. Many of them came right here to San Antonio to the burn center and were treated, and they are carrying on productive lives with their families because of great Americans who helped save them.
Oh, it's an incredible story, and I think it really goes back to the heart that you have for service and trying to make sure that we take care of those who are in uniform, as well as continuing our service to the community, taking care of soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, their families here in San Antonio. So I want to ask you, when you decided to take off the uniform, especially the transition experience is different for mid-career, either enlisted or officers who have spent 20 plus years, their family has kind of grown into this culture. I'm interested to know, when you retired from the Air Force, what were your expectations for your second career?
You know, I think a lot of us retire from the military, or we separate from the military, and we think this is our chance, right? We're going to go out, we're going to do our thing we've always been wanting to do. And we learn, I think a lot of us, that we're very service-minded people. That's the reason we joined the military in the first place, many of us. And if you think about, especially in the enlisted force, people join when they're 17, 18 years old. I mean, they haven't really developed fully their personality yet. Yeah. They really don't know what they desire yet. So they get to be thrust straight into a lot of responsibility, serving people and really helping a lot, becoming defenders of the country. And when they get ready to leave, much like you did in the Marine Corps, you're a little bit kind of questioning yourself. Where do I go from here? You know, what can carry that kind of excitement? What can carry that level of service? And there are very few places that can.
Yeah.
So I think part of my expectation was, you know, I'm now graduating from the Air Force. I'm going to get my own private business. We're going to go do this thing I've been wanting to do. And what I learned was, after a few years of doing that, my heart was in service. That's where it was from the beginning.
Tell us what Endeavors does.
Endeavors is an organization that serves vulnerable people in crisis. And we do that in a lot of different ways across the United States. While we're headquartered here in San Antonio and have been here since 1969 and serving homeless populations across the city to include homeless mothers and adults and people with disabilities, we also serve the veterans population right here at our Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic in San Antonio, Colina, and El Paso, but also at the Veteran Wellness Center, brand new, state-of-the-art, first of its kind in the U.S., right here in San Antonio, Texas. We serve the veteran homeless populations and their families as well. And we've been doing that for several years. We're the largest provider for the Veterans Administration in the state of Texas. Very happy that we serve veterans and their family members. Yeah. In addition to that, we also have some migrant services that we do. We're helping right now along the border in Pecos, Texas, and with some hoteling operations in Arizona and Texas, and also emergency services. Now, these are services that we provide whenever storms or natural disasters occur across Florida, North Carolina, Puerto Rico, and Texas. Literally hundreds of employees doing this when we surge up. We're an organization of about 2,000 employees right now, but when we surge, we've been as high as 3,000 employees. Yep. And it's all because of the nature of the business that we do in helping people.
Well, it's certainly such a need, especially as we see in the veterans community and at this table that we've been able to talk about for the last 70 plus episodes, 80 episodes here on Next Gen Warrior are really the excitement, enthusiasm that I feel to see the veterans community going out and providing services to their brothers and sisters in arms. And I think that's probably something that both of you and I saw since we have gotten out of the service, is realizing the best person to take care of a veteran is another veteran, because you understand the struggles, you understand some of the trauma, you understand the difficulties of even normal military culture, and having to, as you said, kind of readjust to, after you take off the uniform, what's my mission, right, what's my purpose, and to be able to step up to the plate and provide those services is an incredibly admirable, and I'm so excited to be in a place where you know that veterans are going to come to be able to get the help that they need to continue to be productive and healthy citizens after they take off the uniform.
Oh my goodness. Many of our staff members right here in San Antonio and across the United States are veterans themselves. Combat-proven veterans. They know what veterans go through. Our clinician staff here in San Antonio, several veterans that are helping other veterans. So you're right on. You know, our chief operating officer is a veteran as well. 28 years in the Air Force, went to Department of Homeland Security for 7 years. These people understand what public service is about. And that's why I think it's so important that many people need to take advantage of these services. Yeah.
So I'm going to go back a little bit. I touched on it very briefly about your service and what it was like after you took off the uniform. And then I asked you about the mission of Endeavors. So can you help me kind of pair those two things? Because one thing that I am maybe just personally interested in is how people adapt their military skills. And two, what are the skills maybe that you didn't have before you became an executive, and what you had to learn about leadership? Because leadership in the uniform is much different than it is when you're running a private business, when you're running a nonprofit, or if you're just in a corporate workplace. So talk to us a little bit about the skill sets that the military provided you to be a leader, and then some of the things that you maybe had to learn the hard way.
I think one of the most important things that veterans can take away from this is you must always be a student of leadership. You know, the Air Force prepared me well, and many others that are in our organization, that you have to constantly work on and improve your leadership skills. There are so many things that we could talk about today that I was able to improve over years because others went to all that difficult area of providing training and education for me. But even after leaving the military, continuing that leadership education on my own. And so we here at Endeavors really think that's number one as far as developing our staff is education and training. So we have a staff right now that's focused on that. But my own experience has been you must always stay a student of leadership. You always need to learn more about where you're going. And it comes with, I think, humility, but it also comes with the fact that there's an urgency that you are needed. Yeah. You know, when our veterans, because of the way they serve, they never know when that balloon's going to go up and they have to be called into duty. Leadership's very similar to that. You never know when you need to get to the painful side of being a leader. And you have to call on that resource to be able to help you through some very difficult times.
Yeah. So let me hit on the last year, because the last year has been difficult for everyone in just about every single industry, and you all here at Endeavor certainly see that with the services that you're going to be able to provide for young kids, family members, spouses, and for veterans. But before we touch on kind of the military and clinical aspect of it and the services that you provide, talk about what it has meant to you as a leader and what you have learned opening up this beautiful facility, being a project manager, working with your team. And I feel like I've had, I don't want to say the pleasure, but maybe the honor of sitting down with leaders like yourself and hearing these stories about what leadership looked like in a remote environment and what they learned about making sure that the mission and the culture stayed the same when you're in the midst of such a really impactful mission.
Yeah, great question. You know, in the first week of March of 2020, we decided to send all of our employees home. We were fortunate in that we had done a remote work policy and technology background leading up to that event, just because we wanted to do more remote work.
Sure.
But within 2 weeks, all of our services were back online 100%. That means every single client, and that's 1,000 clients a year at this clinic alone, every single client had an opportunity to have the clinician be with them online in a Zoom platform. We were using Zoom before Zoom became in vogue because our clinicians were using it.
Okay.
So we adapted it to the entire organization, and through that, what I learned was, number one, you can work virtually. A lot of us, especially in my age group and older, we're always wondering, can you do that? Is it possible?
Right.
How do you lead in a virtual team? How do you capture leadership on a TV screen? So that has been a challenge, to be honest, and I think there were some sacrifices that we and others have had to make, and one of those was you're losing all those nonverbal cues that you get, even like we're doing in this interview right now. Yeah. You lose all of that, and especially if the video's off. That's been very difficult for a lot of us. So as we go back into post-COVID, and believe me, we're not there yet, but when we do get there, we are going to come back with a more hybrid model for our business, but we're also very much underlining the fact that it is so important to be in person too. Yeah. You must have some personal contact. So that was one of the big takeaways that I had.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a little bit of a curveball. Can you tell our audience about the room we are in right now?
Oh, absolutely. I love telling people about this room. This is our fitness area in our new Veteran Wellness Center. And if you were here, I would get to show you all the amazing machines by Precor that we have in this facility. They are state-of-the-art, they're all connected online, and they are all, or most, available for folks with disabilities, including this Queenax machine behind us. Precor designed this machine such that folks on wheelchairs, folks with some form of disability could come in here and exercise on a daily basis. We believe firmly that one of the areas of wellness is physical fitness, along with spiritual, mental, a lot of the other areas that we have right here in the Veteran Wellness Center with the services that are available. But this is a state-of-the-art facility that we actually had the folks from different fitness areas come in and consult with us and say, for your community-based model, this is the size that you need to have and about the type of equipment that you need to have. So it's a pleasure to introduce this and at our grand opening on November 11th. That's Veterans Day this year, folks.
No, it's inspiring. When I walked in here, I felt like maybe I need to do a couple pull-ups for old time's sake here. But what's your message to veterans who may be struggling or family members who might be looking for assistance for their veterans' mental or physical health?
Thank you. The Veterans Administration provides a lot of support across the country. And we do not compete with the Veterans Administration. We collaborate with the Veterans Administration. In fact, many times they're sending us referrals because they understand their backlog and some of the issues they're dealing with. One of the challenges with the VA is they don't see family members. We do. The veteran gets to decide who the family member is. That can be a boyfriend, girlfriend, caregiver, grandmother. We don't care. Folks, you can get mental health care here and now veteran wellness activities for yourself and your family member at little to no cost. We can provide transportation free of charge. We can provide childcare free of charge. This is the model that Mr. Stephen A. Cohen set up himself as the largest single donation in the history of the U.S. military. $275 million to put 25 clinics across the U.S. Phenomenal. And we had the very first one. It's been here for 5 years.
One thing I want to touch on too that you talked about was the aspect that the holistic approach to health. And that's one thing I preach to our military audience, I preach to the veterans community, that that mental fitness is physical fitness, and physical fitness is psychological fitness, and your emotional health and your spiritual health. They are all tied together.
They are.
And I think especially in the veterans community, I know after I got out of the Marine Corps, I didn't want to run. I didn't want to work out. I didn't want to be around a whole lot of people because I'm naturally an introverted person. I like my quiet time. But I started to realize that not being around people, it induces depression, anxiety, and isolation. And those things, if you're not working out, you're starting to lose your physical fitness, and it kind of spirals. So I think it's just something that I want to hit home with our audiences out there. If you are experiencing some of those anxiety and depression, just going on a walk or getting into the gym or trying to do something physical or getting into a community group, a church group, is a small way just to inch your way back to being that healthy version of yourself.
No doubt about it. We all deal with stress. Every single day we're dealing with stress, all of us. What's important to note is that there are many different areas to make yourself whole and well. Dr. Jill Palmer and I 2 years ago were talking across the street at our corporate headquarters about what more can we do. We have the Stephen A. Cohen Clinic. It's a fantastic resource. But what more can we help veterans with? And this wellness concept, frankly, came out of her doctoral dissertation. And you'll see that online on our website. It encompasses all the different areas of wellness, and we stress it and are doing a lot of research on it right now, too.
Yeah. So can I ask you, what keeps you sharp? What keeps you at the top of your game? Do you have a routine, or are you a reader? Are you doing exercise? But what are you doing to make sure that you come in sharp at the beginning of the week?
I love physical fitness and I love to walk, but my wife walks a lot more than I do.
My wife walks a lot more than I do too. Okay,
she drags me along for all of that, and I'm blessed to have a wife that cares for me. So let's talk about that for a second. Family. We tend to, as warriors, think that when we deploy, it's just us. Folks, it's not us. Our entire family deploys with us, whether it's our child, our boyfriend, girlfriend, life coach, whoever that happens to be in your family, they're deploying with us, and it affects them just as much as it does us. That's why we're here, and that's who we want to be part of. So I would say family obviously is one that's very strong, but I'd also say faith too. Yep. Endeavors is a faith-based organization, and I'm here, frankly, sitting in this chair today because I'm so into the idea that we are concentrated and soulfully behind the faith, the Christian faith in our lives. It is one of the areas of wellness and very, very important as we design and think about how we stay fit.
Yeah. No, it's certainly, and I think the community aspect too, whether that's your faith group or your church, where you are able to share those difficult experiences you might have in the service, or family members to get plugged in to that sort of community. And it's certainly something that I recognize of learning that I'm going to have to exercise different types of social muscles, different types of intellectual muscles after I get out of the military, some of which, to be honest with you, had atrophied while I was in the service because it demanded different things of me. But I'm very thankful that also you brought up the family dynamics of it, because having those healthy families, those healthy family units when you get out of the military can also be very helpful when you struggle, and to know that the families can either come here and get resources or they can direct their veteran here is certainly an asset.
It's a great lead-in. Many times our wounded warriors, those who cannot totally care for themselves, the caregivers become their families. Mm-hmm. And they carry a lot of emotional trauma having to deal with that. That's one of the reasons they need to come here. They need to be part of this. We need to help them along with that process. And there are many other groups too, but we collaborate with many across the state of Texas for help.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, and I want to say thank you to you. I want to say thank you to your staff and the great folks who have made this possible, especially as you mentioned over the last year in a remote environment. You guys have still been working. You guys have still pushed out into the community to provide programs and resources to veterans, and that's what we encourage on this show, is not that difficulties won't come your way, or not that you can avoid the difficulties after service, but when you do encounter those, that go use the programs and resources that are available at places like Endeavors, the VA clinic, whether it's a student veterans group or your veterans community in your community, is to be involved, keep growing, and keep leading after you take off the uniform. With that, John, I would love to give you the last word. If there's a word of advice or encouragement for our audience before we close this one out.
I'd love to do that, Dan. At the end of the day, we were on teams in the military. That's the most effective unit that you have. And we at Endeavors here have a fantastic team, where there's Tracy Gomez, who's sitting right next to me over here, our Chip Fulgham, our Chief Operating Officer, Steve Lefevre, our Chief Financial Officer, many others that are not to go named here, but I'll tell you, a strong team provides success. And that's chief at what you must do. As you're transitioning from whatever branch of service that you're in, though, I'd task you or like you to think about just keeping your mind open. You may have some preconceived ideas about what your best fit is, but I think if you prayerfully and thoughtfully consider it, you may find out that somewhere else you're needed a lot more than you think you are. So keep that in mind as you go through your transition. I think you'll figure it out.
Thanks, John.
You bet.
On behalf of Chairman George P. Bush and our dedicated staff at the Texas Veterans Land Board, I'll tell you what, it feels good to be in person here, sitting down with John today, to be able to have these conversations. This is actually the first interview that we have gotten to do in person since about March or April of 2020. It's great to be back out in the community, and we encourage you, for those who are at home listening to the podcast or watching the show, if there is a veteran or a military service members in your family, please direct them our way. We would love to get them plugged in to the programs and resources that they have earned so that they can continue to lead and serve after leaving the uniform. On behalf of our team here at the Texas Veterans Land Board and the Next Gen Warrior Show, we'll see you next week. Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior podcast.